Although it was incredibly popular back in the day, critics were not all that impressed with the Game Boy. Issue after issue, Electronic Gaming Monthly wondered why anybody would want to play a crummy-looking black and white game when they could be discovering the Super Nintendo's rich library of 16-bit greats. I wonder what Sushi X would think about a game like BIOTA, a modern-day action platformer designed to look and play like it was some long-lost Game Boy game from the early 1990s. Would he be able to comprehend the neo-retro movement? Or would his head explode when I recommend this lo-fi throwback game over a whole basket full of big-budget AAA titles? Well, you can find out when I review the new game, BIOTA. Don't be fooled by the small sprites and monochromatic graphics, because BIOTA is an alarmingly fun science fiction game that is compelling right from the moment you turn it on. It's the future, and a meteorite has demolished North America, inadvertently revealing a new element named Viridium that opens up interplanetary travel. As you would imagine, this creates a new gold rush, with major corporations fighting over land and settlements. The biggest mining company is V Corp, who has cornered the market using a bunch of shady tactics. It's on one of V Corp's bases, Frontier Horizon, where a new biological organism has infected the ecosystem. That's troubling, but what makes this even worse is the fact that a team of scientists and researchers were sent to the asteroid to investigate and then never heard from again. Now it's up to a ragtag group of hired guns known as the Gemini 2 Squad to rescue the team and figure out what the hell is going on. Now look, if you've played a science fiction game before or have seen the movie Aliens, then you can probably guess what comes next. By the time the Gemini 2 Squad gets there, the whole mining facility has been overrun by a bunch of creatures that we've never seen before. And that's not even the worst part, as you'll discover by exploring the large, interconnected base and revealing more information about the aliens and V-Corp's involvement in this mess. BIOTA plays out like a stripped-down Metroidvania mixed with Mega Man. It's a run-and-gun shooter that sees us battling aliens through a bunch of small rooms that are all connected together, just waiting for us to find the right key or items that'll allow us to take our investigation even further into the mines. The big difference between this game and most variations of the Metroidvania formula is that instead of finding the power-ups and items you need to advance the story, we instead have to buy them from one of the many shops. The trick is that we can only hold so much money at once, so we'll need to find hidden items that'll increase the size of our wallet, which in turn will allow us to earn enough money to buy the items that we need to advance the story. Look, it's a roundabout way of doing things, but the end result remains the same. Now, while the facility is interconnected, the game does a good job of splitting up the base into a bunch of levels that you'll need to complete. There will usually be some sort of big loop that'll let us explore that part of the Frontier Horizon, locate its hidden secrets, beat the boss, and then move on, making it so that you'll never have to revisit this part of the base again. And if by chance you do need to come back, it's usually to buy one of those expensive items that you need, which is usually fairly close to the handy elevator. I was really impressed by the pacing of the game and how the backtracking was kept to a minimum. Another great thing about the Gemini 2 Squad is that it's actually a bunch of people and not just one lone wolf fighting for survival. The game introduces you to a bunch of cool looking characters that you can switch between at almost any time. These different fighters will have their own stats and weapons, giving you a little variety when you play the game. Some of them will even have special moves that'll help them get through especially tricky areas. For example, there's a playable robot that is perfect for the very poisonous sections of the facility. Better still, you'll even earn more playable characters when you beat the game, giving us plenty of incentive to play through the story multiple times. And just when you get sick of the traditional platforming action, the game will throw a curveball at you. You'll suddenly be smashing things up with a mech, or exploring a flooded part of the base with a submarine. And these aren't short diversions either, as some of these vehicle levels will last just as long as the on-foot missions. And, before you ask, yes, the game does eventually turn into a traditional space shoot-'em-up, complete with new weapons and a bunch of aliens and asteroids to shoot at. For a game that looks so simple, BIOTA has a surprising amount of variety. Sadly, sometimes that variety can work against us. This is one of those games that introduces a bunch of new mechanics at the very end, and not all of them work. I was especially surprised that the final boss nixes all the platforming action that we've been doing this whole time and instead goes in a completely different direction, almost shifting the game into an entirely different genre. Look, don't get me wrong, the end battle isn't all that hard, so it's not like we have to deal with a huge learning curve or anything. However, that almost makes it worse. Instead of being a culmination of everything that we've learned up to that point, it feels like the developer just tossed us into a completely different game. It would have been better if these gameplay elements were introduced earlier in the game and then revisited at the end. My other complaint is that the monochromatic look sometimes makes it hard to see what you need to avoid. I found myself taking a lot of damage, not because I'm bad at platforming, but rather because the shots would blend in with the background. It doesn't help that the checkpoints are few and far between. I kept running into the problem where I would hit the checkpoint with only 1 or 2 health bars, which means that you can't get hit by even a single enemy or it's game over for the Gemini 2 squad. The frustrating thing is if we die and then reload at that checkpoint, we still only have 1 or 2 health bars. You can go all the way back to the surface base where a robot will refill your health, but you don't want to do that because that means losing a whole lot of progress. This is especially bad in the final stage, where the game will checkpoint out of the blue and not even give you a choice. That said, I do like the throwback look of BIOTA. This is obviously not authentic to the Game Boy experience, as the old school hardware would buckle under the pressure of trying to display this many sprites at once. But even if it's not 100% accurate, the game is guaranteed to take you back in time to when side-scrolling platformers were all the rage. It's also worth noting that you can cycle through a surprising amount of color variations, including some familiar classics like CGA and Old Terminal. Look, I love this option, even if some of the selection makes my eyes bleed. Beyond the old school graphics, the real star here is the amazing chiptune soundtrack. From the exciting, to the haunting, to the mysterious, every song featured in this game is catchy and fits right in. Again, it's not something that an 8-bit system would have been able to play 3 decades ago. But let me tell you, the soundtrack delivers the goods. And you know what? That's true about pretty much every part of BIOTA. This is a great playing action game that is paced perfectly and full of memorable moments. Even if you don't have nostalgia for the early Game Boy, this game is incredibly easy to recommend. I don't care if it's 1992 or 2022. BIOTA would be a great game no matter the year. Inspired by the monochromatic titles of the past, this game may look slight, but deep down, it's an intriguing science fiction adventure full of cool enemies, a twisted story, and levels full of tricky platforming challenges. It's also surprisingly varied, giving us multiple vehicles to pilot and bosses to fight that bounce between genres. The monochromatic look does make it hard to see some of the enemy fire, and some of the genre hopping could have been set up better. But fans of Metroidvania games are in for a real treat when they reveal the secrets found in BIOTA. Hey, thanks for watching our review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. In fact, there's a whole playlist with more than 700 reviews that are just like this one. Now, here's the question I have for you. What is your favorite trapped in space game? It can be on a spaceship, or maybe a planet, or I don't know, maybe even one of these mining facilities. I'm really just looking for a character to be lost in space. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back on Monday with a feature ranking the best and worst Jurassic Park games. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,